So I think it was last week. I don't know exactly what day it was, but
Probably Tuesday.
oh yeah, that's
Podcast
right. It
first.
was exactly after the exact day after we recorded. But
Yep.
Nintendo announced that they wouldn't be having a massive press conference at E3 like they usually do, alongside the other major consoles like PS4 or Sony and Microsoft. So that's basically all they said, but it was also implied that they were going to continue doing more things or put more focus on, what was it called? They have a
Nintendo
service,
Direct?
yeah, Nintendo Direct, that they
Yeah.
would, basically they release their own stuff on and their own news. So,
Yeah. It's like their own little personal E3.
yeah. But from what I understand, it's all the time
Yeah.
that
It's
they
like a
could use
constant.
that.
Yeah, it's like a constant news update.
Yeah.
Which is a very good idea in theory.
Yeah, well, I get why. I guess we'll talk about. I was going to say something about Nintendo Direct, but I guess we'll go right into that. Other than, well, first of all, I want to say, do you think that it's a good, bad idea that they're passing on E3?
Personally, I think it's a bad idea because it's probably going to hurt them quite a bit in the general public's eyes.
Yeah, and I think that that's the biggest thing that they have to look at.
Yeah.
I think that it's a bad idea in terms of, well, I guess
The only people who would use Nintendo Direct are like diehard Nintendo fans.
Yes, exactly. And if any news like, well, the difference between E3 and Nintendo Direct is that E3 is for the general public, right? Well, I guess
It's for the press, but the general public knows about it.
It's general public because it's going to make news, right?
Yeah.
Even people who know nothing about anything about video games and just kind of wanted to, or let's say somebody was like, I have my own console, maybe I'll look into what's going on with that news kind of thing, right? If these are people that just play Call of Duty and that's it, or like people that just play sports games like Madden or NHL or something like that, and that's the only thing they play, and they might tune into, then they're going to say, well, what's the big thing? Oh, E3, right? I'll look at their press conference because it gives the outlook of the whole year.
Yeah.
Right? But
because like I know that every year there's at least one thing somewhere in the Toronto Star that's like E3 blah 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 blah.
Yeah, it's so something that the mainstream news is going to say, right?
If someone thinks of a video game conference, the first thing they'll think of is E3.
Yeah,
not like PAX or BlizzCon. It's like, oh, E3.
Mm-hmm. And so I think the passing on that is the big mistake. If they wanted to cut out like every single other press conference tour, then that seems fine. Even though I think they have a big presence at Tokyo Game Show, right?
Yeah, they have a huge one there.
So,
but E3 is not where they should take a break.
I think that if you were going to say that those two, like TGS and E3, I think that if they kept their presence there, that would be good. But then if they cut out things like everything else that they go to, if they even do, I think that they have at least some kind of representation at something like PAX or, right?
They've always got something small.
Yeah. So if they cut all that, then okay, whatever, that's their prerogative. But I can't see this panning out very good for them.
As weird as this sounds, E3 is the wrong place to try and be innovative with this kind of stuff.
Yes.
As much as it's the right place to be innovative, it's not the right place to be innovative with the press.
Could it also be sort of like the opposite, where the goal of E3 for all of these, all the game companies is to kind of one-up everyone, right? That's the entire goal, is to come out with the biggest press conference, and then people always say who won E3, right?
Yeah.
Even though that it's not a contest, it's just saying what they're going to do. But that's the what everybody tries to figure out, like who won E3. So by circumventing the entire process and bringing up their name in this in the news, do you think that they just kind of won E3 per se by not even going to E3?
I feel like there's going to be some very big news stories happening soon. And instead of being like Sony did this or Xbox did this, it's going to be Nintendo did not go to E3.
Yeah, and every single thing that somebody says about a game, they're going to have to kind of like, or if anybody who's comparing like the who did what at E3, they're going to have to mention, oh, and Nintendo didn't show up in a controversial decision, right? They're going to have to say that every single time.
Yeah. It's very good publicity. It's an interesting thing they've done. I'm kind of confused by it now, actually.
It's like the talk of E3 was that Nintendo wasn't at E3.
Yeah.
And it's before even E3 even was a thought in anybody's mind.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
But I think we'd have to look into when that's happening, actually, because it's usually around this time, right? End of May, June?
Yeah, I thought it was like June 11th through 13th.
Something like that, yeah.
That sounds familiar.
We'll have to start prepping.
NERDcast trip.
Well, virtually prepping. But getting back to Nintendo Direct. Yeah. So, if it's going to... how is this? I don't even know how it works. Is it on the console, or is it like a website? Like, what is it?
On the console. I know that the Wii U had a huge update a little while ago that I haven't done yet. Like, I haven't even used Nintendo Direct yet. I just haven't had time to set everything up.
Yeah.
But I feel like it'll just be like, here, click on this. This is our news. This is what's happening. This is what's brand new and happening.
And I get that something like this seems like it's something that the hardcore market has been asking for a while, right? Like, people always complain that nobody really knows when the PlayStation Store is going to get updated or when certain things are going to have an update released, right? At least with this method, if they have their own dedicated channel, like, they could have a weekly show that says, hey, this is what's going on. This game's coming out this week. You're going to want to get that. There's an update. There's an update that's going to do this. That's
what's going to happen in the end.
Right? Like, that's a good idea. Like, and it's something that the hardcore fan base has been asking for.
Which is funny, because it's on a Nintendo console.
Well, yeah, that's kind of funny. But then again, when you're comparing it to getting the news out, right? Getting the news of what your company's doing, and you're comparing it to the people who already own your console, or people who are looking for that news via Nintendo Direct, or the general public who's looking at E3, right? It's such a different audience that you're reaching with E3 than it is Direct, like Nintendo Direct.
It feels, I'm guessing it'll feel like a more personal thing with the Nintendo users, but I don't know.
When you said that, I just pictured like some kind of like fireplace and Shigeru Miyamoto sitting there like rocking back and forth, and he's just like
storybook. It's Nintendo Direct, and he's just reading things to the children sitting around the fireplace.
I think that would actually be pretty interesting.
Yeah, we should draw that. That'd be a fun picture. But just like the little inferno fireplace in the background, just crackling away.
But yeah, so, and what do you think this means for E3, like, as a press conference? Like, if one of the major three people pulls out of it, do you think that maybe it's going to think of the other two companies are going to consider this again? Maybe not showing up?
I think that there's a good chance they might consider it, and it may, like, this is me throwing it out there, it may turn into, like, an indie games kind of conference.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, because like right now, I know the indie games are on a huge spike right now. You heard about what happened with Game Developer Tycoon, right?
Yes. The piracy thing.
That is amazing.
It was the perfect way to do that. Well, we'll just sum it up. For those of you who didn't hear, it was a game called Game Developer Tycoon came out, which was, I believe, was an indie game, right?
Yeah.
And the game was about making video games, and I think that it was like a huge portion of it had pirated it, or at least pirated their old games or something like that.
The thing is that it had like 3,000 users, but 94% of them pirated the game. But the copy to be pirated was released by the company who made the game. They released a special version for the pirators.
Yeah. They put out a special version onto like the torrent sites, the major ones, and so when people downloaded it, you get to a point in the game where when you released a game in the game, it's going to sound confusing, but
like when you get further on in the game too, after you've played for a few hours.
Yeah, a little notice would come up and it would say, your game's getting great ratings, but it's being pirated, and it would basically kind of cap your earnings, so that it was impossible to progress.
Yeah.
And then people were always complaining on the forums. It was like, this game's impossible. I can't beat it. And then they were just basically like saying, well, it's because you pirated the game. Mm-hmm. It was
it's amazing.
Yeah. It was kind of it reminds me of I don't remember which one it was. It was one of the Batman Arkham ones. So it was either Arkham Asylum or Arkham City. I think it was the first one. but the cape was broken, so you couldn't like glide. So just like if you jumped, you would just like awkwardly fall.
Yeah, I think
right?
I remember that.
And it got to a point where you had to glide to this part, and you couldn't get past it. So people were like stuck at that point in the game. So that I like how that's the main thing that people are doing to combat piracy, and I it's a good idea.
Yeah, they're just making the game impossible to beat without one small thing.
So it's kind of off topic, but
Yeah, still, it's pretty cool.
It's interesting, yes.
Indie games.
But so yeah, I think that if it's just gonna, it could be kind of weird just having Microsoft and Sony there, because it's gonna get to the point where it's like, okay, if one of them's gonna think, well, I was competing with both of the major other companies, but now that one's not even here anymore, it's just kind of like
It's like the fun is gone. It's like that bully on the playground, then all of his targets leave him and he's all alone.
Yeah, and so now it's just like Sony and Microsoft having a little slap fight in the corner while Nintendo's off doing their own thing.
And then there's I just keep picturing it's like a log cabin, and Sony and Microsoft are just off in the corner.
You say, with Nintendo Direct videos?
Yeah. They're just off in the corner, and there's a spider hanging down on a thread from the ceiling. They're sitting in front of like a really old rickety TV.
But I'm wondering if this can be like some sort of a catalyst to have Sony and Microsoft have their own sort of like a press conference a la like BlizzCon sort of thing, right?
Yeah, well, if Nintendo Direct ends up being successful, then yeah, that's what they'll do.
And I guess you could kind of say that Sony did a bit of a foray into it with like with their own little press conference where they revealed the controller and some of the games, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people were tuned into that, and that was like the big news for a while.
Yeah, for a little while.
So
yeah, it's like E3 might just become irrelevant eventually.
Which I think overall, well, it's going to be obviously be bad for the press conference itself, right? There's not going to be as many people showing up, but with the upswing in popularity for indie games, it could be could find its own little niche, right?
Yeah. It'd be cool if it turned into an indie game competition or conference.
Even though I guess you could argue that PAX is already sort of that way. It's not really focused on the bigger ones. It's like it gives even footing to every single game, regardless of what kind of backing it is, right?
E3 might just turn into like, this is what's happening in the indie game scene. So it would show games like Don't Starve, Minecraft, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So
that'd be interesting.
I think that only time will tell. E3's days could be numbered.
Nintendo's being innovative again. Let's see what happens this time. It's a very common occurrence now.
Yes, it's been a long while since they've innovated.
Yep. They're just like, no, we are not going to your press conference. Talk to the hand.
The current line of characters attests to Nintendo's innovative nature, considering it's the same ones that they've had for almost 30 years now.
Yeah. Nintendo.